Jordan, if I'm not mistaken, I think that was your first career punt return touchdown, if I'm not mistaken, all that. I guess kind of how that feel?
It feels great. It's a sign of relief, because being a punt returner is probably like one of the most like just stressful things that really on the field besides a quarterback. Because you got to make sure you got to take care of the ball, and just to turn something small like that into a big play, it's awesome. It feels great.
Been wearing the no contact jersey most of the fall. On Saturday, did you kind of feel like your role was going to be that big, or was it a surprise to you at all?
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm real in tune with the game plan and things like that, and just taking it day by day, and just getting better every day. Really, I knew my role within the team, so it wasn't nothing kind of really like new to me.
Jordan, after battling injury throughout camp, describe to me how it felt to be so successful not only as a punt returner but as a wide receiver on Saturday.
Yeah, it felt great. It really did. It really felt really good to get out there and go against somebody who's not your teammate, and that's always helpful. And just when the juices get flowing and things like that, you just your adrenaline takes over and you can't really feel nothing. So you just get out there and just play your game.
Just from your eyes, your perspective, obviously the passing game was working for everybody, but just what did you see from Dart in that first half? Did he look like that maturity and that comfort level that everybody's kind of been talking about through camp?
Yeah, for sure, no doubt. I think Dart's grown tremendously over the offseason. In that first game, the first half was, just a testimony to that, really. You've seen him going through his reads, checking the ball down, not forcing the ball. I think, he played a really, really good game, complete game, and, I think there's only room for improvement throughout the whole season.
You guys are obviously playing one of the hotter programs in the country off of the end of last season, and they beat South Alabama on Saturday. What have you seen so far from Tulane defensively?
Yeah, they got a really good defense. They got really good players, a really good scheme. Their coach knows what he's doing. So we got to come with our A game for sure. They're a really good football team, even offensively, defensively. So they're going to come ready to play, and we got to be ready.
Jordan, did anybody surprise you on Saturday? Now, I assume you've seen the film. Did anybody have a performance that surprised you?
Yeah, I just think I think the whole offense as a whole. I think we all surprised each other, and we all knew that we were special as an offense. And just to going out there, like I said before, and going out there and getting to play somebody else besides your teammates was really fun for a change. And I think that we surprised ourselves just with how efficient that we were able to play and things like that. So. I think it's going to be a really, really fun season for us this year.
What were you thinking when Trey was racking up 4 touchdown receptions? You wanted some of that too, didn't you?
I mean, Trey, he's an unbelievable athlete, man. It's awesome just to see somebody like that, especially his first game as a Rebel. It's awesome, you just got to take it's history. Which is one of those things where it's just like I was a part of that, and it couldn't come to a better guy like Trey. He just shows up every day, works his butt off, and it was good to see that happen to him on Saturday.
Did you surprise yourself?
I think so for sure. Just with my role being what it was last year, kind of the third receiver guy, being the third option. I felt like that once the game got flowing and things like that, it was like, okay, it kind of sunk into me a little bit. And, everybody takes a peek up at the Jumbotron sometimes, and you see that stat line, and you're like, holy crap, and you're just like, wow, that's putting up some big numbers,
When Jackson was in here Saturday, he was raving about your football IQ, especially when lining up, making sure that everybody was set, even if the receivers didn't know what they were quite doing in the moment that you were there to basically put them in check and kind of hold them accountable, all that. You feel like that leadership and that vocality kind of blossomed at some point since you've been here at Ole Miss?
Yeah, for sure. I always take pride in just knowing what to do and going out there and kind of being like a safety blanket for the quarterback and kind of being the quarterback of the receivers almost. If somebody's not set, then you know where they got to be at. You get them there, so that way we can run the play efficiently. I'm just a really, really big stickler on details. I like to be detailed in pretty much everything I do, really. and just being that extra voice out there, that extra coach, it helps, make the offense flow because we run really fast. And, whenever you're out there on the field and things start flying and, you just got to be locked in the moment. So I take really big pride in, kind of being a coach out there on the field.
Seems like Caden Lee has really come on late. He caught that touchdown, and Jackson was saying that the moment it kind of clicked when he saw it was there was this one catch during the first scrimmage where it was a slot fade, and he made this he was a really impressive catch. From your perspective, where has Caden grown over these last few weeks?
I think he's grown tremendously. Just being locked into the details as a freshman, sometimes, you can let it get to you a little bit. I remember when I was a freshman, we were playing in College Game Day and we were playing Miami, and it was like, oh my gosh, we're ranked 15th in the nation and stuff like that. So it can get to you really, really fast. And I think he's done a really good job at handling all of his emotions and, kind of handling like a pro. I call him, like they call him around the building. He's my little brother. I just got to make sure that, he stays focused because it's super hard to, lose sight of the details and what the main goal is.
You mess with Jeremy any after he got your TD nullified?
We watched it in film today, and I gave him a little nudge and gave him a look, and he was just like, my bad. So, those guys played a heck of a game. Obviously I would like to have that one back, but you got to give those guys credit where it's due. They played a heck of a game. Jackson was clean most of the game, so that's all you can really ask for. Everybody's gonna make mistakes, and that's okay, but yeah, I gave him a little smirk. More
questions?
Thank y'all.